And by the way, good morning. He's Michael Knight. He's down in Pasadena.
That's New York Vinnie. He's on the road today. He's in Spokane, Washington. Usually he works out of Seattle. Well, he always works out of Seattle.
Yeah.
But he's available at any time on your home planet. So just tune in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at this time at 10:10.
And you get us. You get us for better or for worse, for a better or gooder. Whichever way you want us, you get us. You can make fun of us. You can listen to us. You can say, oh, I didn't know that. There's a lot of things you can do. This is not just see, if you're a right winger and you listen to this show, you say, oh, those guys, you just make fun of us. And if you're a left winger and you listen to this show, you can just make fun of us. But if you're anywhere in the middle, you can probably find multiple things to do with this show, except, Michael, put us on the floor of your birdcage. We will not be crapped on. Keep that in mind.
Well, we don't. That would require some form of publication, and that's fortunately for us today. Usually at the end of the show, we just throw our show ideas away. Here's what it amounts to. So who would keep this anyway? By the way,
Well,
I glanced at this before as we were getting ready to go on the air, and once again, I cannot read my notes.
Well, if you had a crapping cockatiel, you might keep something like that around. But I haven't had a bird since the last one I had. I came home and found it on the floor of the cage.
Well, we've got two. We got a 20-pound cat and an 18-pound cat, and in the middle of the night, they decided to barf down the back hallway. So that was that's 40 pounds of cat barfing in the middle of the night, and leaving it there, hoping that you'll step in it on the way to do your other business during the events of the day. These are the animals I live with, Vinnie.
That's not fair. I think for all you do for those animals, the amount of money that you spend on keeping them alive,
Yes.
Let's face it, the government wouldn't spend on us to keep us alive. They should be grateful, but they're not, Michael. Cats are probably, I think, the closest thing you'll find to true humans in that they don't care.
But they're freer than humans. Humans are bound by their likes and dislikes and fears and their past problems and their future hopes. They're bound by them. Cats are freer than that. Cats, the term is, I want to be as free as the cats are free.
Who wrote that?
I did.
Oh, I like that.
And the answer is you can't be.
No,
You got to be a cat.
because I couldn't see you. Now, I know some people would do this, but I can't see you or I actually jumping from the chair over there over to the couch, which is probably, I don't know, 10 feet, 11 feet.
You'd have to be Usain Bolt.
Neither one of us and most Americans aren't going to do that. A cat's going to get up on that chair, see something that or some spot or some thing that they want, and where's the cat going? Now they go boom, 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 or it may just take off. I think the squirrels are the ones that really get the freedom because they leap from tree to tree with no fear.
No fear.
No fear. I was watching a squirrel this morning out in the backyard, and the thing is just going tree to tree. And I'm telling you, Spokane, they still have those big trees that if one of them come down, it'll take like a city block with it.
Oh, yeah. Oak. Uh-huh.
And good God, man, this squirrel is jumping from tree to tree and house to house. And he's not worried about falling. He's not worried about landing on his back. I was getting worried that I was going to get sick and that I was going to get hurt looking at him.
I want to run something by the cat that jumped from the couch to the counter, and that is, at any time during the night, during the slow hours, like 3 or 4 a.m., did he consider barfing in the hallway and leaving it there? Just did it run through his mind? Did it pass through his mind?
Well, if I were a hardcore Democrat, I would say to you, you didn't, that the federal government needed to train the cat at birth so that it would be conditioned to go to the bathroom.
Cat training.
Some amount of government training was required. some kind of assistance to get that training was required. If I were a Republican, I would say the government has, well, I would say that that's not a cat.
And that's the end of that argument.
Yeah.
And you know who agrees with you? Kanye
Donald.
West says, Kanye West looks at it and says, I know what Vinny's talking about. That's not a cat.
Not a cat. It looks like a cat, and maybe you think it's a cat, but I'm telling you, as a card carrying Republican, that ain't no cat.
What about this cat barf? That's not barf.
I don't know how it got there. Oh no, everything around remains the same. It's just going to tell you that that's not a cat. The barf can be there. They could have stepped in the barf. They could have even, as many Republicans probably do, take their finger, run it through the barf, and lick it just to make sure it's barf and not tapioca pudding.
Because if it were tapioca pudding, we could have a quorum and maybe vote on something.
But no, the Republican will tell you that the barf is there, the shit is in the box, the fur is on the couch,
but
cat.
Which brings us back to the theme of our last show, which was truth, justice, and the American way, or as I call it, TJ and the AW.
Yes, the famous words of the opening of Superman, truth, justice, and the American way, what we were all looking for and hoping for.
And the first thing to go has to be truth. If you can alter what is true, you can change what is justice, and you can also alter with the American way. But first has to go truth.
Well, I think truth took a large step toward leaving us completely over the weekend.
What happened?
The man who owns a very possibly the largest media company, the largest communications company in the world, decided that it would be a good idea at some point over the weekend to tweet out that a idiotic conspiracy theory about the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
What's he been accused of?
No, he's not accused. Remember, he got attacked.
I know, but in the tweet.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to say it.
I happen to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, because I'm not going to dignify it. I'm not going to dignify a rumor like that.
And Elon Musk said, hey, this could be true. It's probably not, but take a look.
Well, he tweeted, well, here's another way to look at it.
Oh, I
like
see.
He's Walter freaking Cronkite. And this guy, the oligarchs, him and Trump and several others have taken a big step over the weekend, I think, and last week with Musk acquiring Twitter, in making sure that if we don't know the truth, or if we know the truth, that we're certainly confused about it, that they certainly sow the seeds of doubt. Now, maybe it's been like that all along, Michael. Maybe that is the American way.
Yeah, but it was the Sun, and you could see the newspaper at the checkout counter, and you didn't have to buy it. It wasn't part of your actual communication stream with your friends and your loved ones. It wasn't Elon Musk entering your social media framework and saying, hi, it's Elon again, good morning. You're using my tool, and here's what I want you to know.
So I'm confronted this morning with, it's interesting that this would happen. Saturday night, I think I told you I drove out Friday, drove out to Spokane with the Ford Lightning truck that has the frunk, the trunk in the front. You open it up and it's no engine yet, it's a trunk.
A frunk.
So I took some pictures of the frunk and posted them on Twitter. Actually, this happened before the Musk thing. And so I posted it with, I forget what I said, but it was something like, we got the frunk. I used like 3 song titles.
There you go.
Can anybody give me, we're going to a Seahawks party because we had ice and beverages and groceries in the frunk. We loaded up the frunk. So I took a picture of it and I tweeted it and I tagged Ford on it. Well, Ford corporate and the president of Ford got a hold of the tweet.
Wow.
And they thought it was great. So they retweeted it.
Whoa.
So
you're on
I know
fire.
it sounds stupid, but in my world that I live,
Big deal.
recognition on social media with these cars is part of the deal now. Never used to be. You could just do the radio show and that's it. But
Good
now,
job, good job, Vinnie.
because social media is so prevalent and so key to my business and what I'm trying to do, I go on it yesterday and I see this Musk tweet and I'm like 2 seconds away from just delete Twitter. Just, I don't want this in my life. I don't need this in my life. I don't want to be a part of anyone who is espousing or publicizing conspiracy theories that, in my mind, are ridiculous and have already been debunked.
And
this is the same guy who tweeted a picture of Hitler not too long ago with some, I forget, some kind of, he had the right idea about freedom or something like, some kind of crap. I forget exactly what it was. If you want to know what it was, go look at it. It's all over online, but that's probably not exactly what he tweeted, but it was something that was incendiary.
And unnecessary.
And I'm just at a point where I think these guys and women to a certain degree, but it's mostly guys, want to turn us against each other. If we turn against each other, we will not pay attention to what they are doing.
Or come and march in formation with us as we march through the intersection.
Right. And so I'm just sitting here thinking, do I need to be, now I have 5,000 something Twitter followers, 4,009, so it's not a great amount. And I could probably get most of them either over to Instagram or to Facebook, where I suspect that post would have never made it onto Facebook.
Well, the guy happens to run his own company now, and he fired the people who knew how to run it. So now there's no one in charge that has the faintest idea where the controls are. And about all Elon Musk can do is make it worse by saying ugly things like that with a smirk, and then saying, by the way, I think I'm going to charge all you people $20 a month for the privilege of being on my machine.
Where was the FCC in this, Michael? Where was this Federal Trade Commission? Where was the Federal Communications Commission? Where are our judges that would block this until there could be some kind of investigation to take a look at if this is a good thing? If NBC wanted to buy ABC,
it would take a while.
It'd be years. How long did it take CNN? Who was it that just bought CNN? Was it Time Warner? No, it wasn't Time Warner. It was Time Warner. How long did it take Time Warner to get CNN? It took them years.
Because all the governing societies in Europe and elsewhere around the world also had to okay it. You just can't buy an international product and not have the international audience acquiesce.
Where is this for Musk? Where is this for a guy who has shown before that he is able, that he is willing to participate in what amounts really to subterfuge, what amounts really to spreading rumors, what amounts really to yelling fire in a crowded theater?
You know what the investigation involved? Do you have $44 million? Yeah, I got it right over here with the financing guys. Investigation's over. That's it.
44 billion, I think it was, right?
44 billion. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
The investigation is complete.
So that's so truth. It's funny that in fact, it's so funny because you just you said truth, and Donald Trump, CNN just put a graphic up with truth on the top of it, and under it, of course, it's Truth Social, and under it is Donald Trump telling a lie,
or just talking.
So remember that the guy that owns Truth Social is built a career on telling you lies.
If it's on truth, it's a lie.
There's no fairness doctrine. There's no repercussions. There's nothing.
No operating standards.
Under the guise of free speech,
Salute.
it's more and more becoming that you can't get the truth.
Well, you don't really want the truth. What I'm looking for is a nice alternative for the truth that I can live with.
Well, some of us want the truth. Some of us would rather have the truth. You tell me the truth and I'll deal with it. As opposed to, and it's not that people aren't, I used to think that they didn't tell you the truth in government because they didn't want to cause mass hysteria. In the days of, and I wasn't around for Roosevelt or Truman, a little bit for Eisenhower. But when you heard about those people lying to you and things that they did, I always felt that they didn't tell you because they were hiding something. They were telling you much more because they didn't want to cause mass panic. They didn't want to cause things like that. Now I at times revisit that, especially since Eisenhower had the great military industrial complex quote. He saw what was coming.
It was a clear warning to himself and to the people that he had worked with all those years in the Army.
Right. By the time guys like McNamara got in charge, who was the president of Ford and left Ford to become the Secretary of Defense and put us deeper and deeper into Vietnam.
Awful.
The truth was nowhere to be found. And it wasn't about keeping you safe. It wasn't about keeping you from panicking. It was about a certain cabal of people making money and shredding young American boys' lives and the Vietnamese people's lives to do it.
So we could say we never lost a war. Hey, I've been to all of them. We've never lost one yet. We're not going to lose this one. In fact, I see, Vinnie, the light at the end of the tunnel on this one. And there's going to be a beautiful American victory. If we have enough helicopters to get everybody out, it's going to be fabulous.
How odd it is too, Michael. I just thought about this. This just popped into my head, and I have to check to see what the date is. But we talk about, we bring truth up in the context of Superman and the Superman show that was so popular in the 50s, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. By 1960, the whole truth thing had turned around. And the military industrial complex was gearing up. And
they just needed a place to go.
Right. And they found it with Lyndon Johnson. And we can surmise, and if we want to deal in conspiracy theories, we can always go back to Dallas, America's greatest conspiracy theory, Dallas, 1963. But it just struck me as I was sitting here talking, and sometimes when I talk, my head clicks off my head. Superman died on June 16th, 1959.
Wow, that was a long time ago. That was earlier than I thought.
That was the day that George Reeves, and again, more conspiracy theories.
Much more.
Was killed or killed himself in the bedroom of his house in Benedict Canyon.
Can you briefly say why it could be and why it couldn't be, why it might be suicide and why it might not be?
Well, for the short version, and a great movie to watch about it is Hollywoodland, with Ben Affleck playing George Reeves. Spectacular movie about George Reeves and the whole Superman thing. To make it real short, George Reeves, single young guy, many people rumored him to be gay, actually, because he came out of the Pasadena Playhouse in the 30s. Got his big break with Gone with the Wind, and then had a number of movies in the 40s, was on track to be one of the big A-list guys in Hollywood. Was on track, a good-looking guy and everything, but went off to war in 1942. When he came back, his rabbi, who was, and I forget his name off the top of my head, but his rabbi had passed away. And so when he came back, he was kind of relegated to B movies and serials and things like that because for whatever reason,
He lost the Jews.
So he takes up with this woman named Toni Mannix, who is the wife of the head of Columbia, wife of the assistant head of, I believe it was Columbia Pictures.
Currently
Eddie
married
Mannix.
to him. Yeah.
And Eddie is a fixer. So Eddie is the guy when you have union problems, he goes and sees the guys and gets it straightened out. If your young star is caught in a motel room with somebody, he's the guy that goes and takes care of it with the LA cops. If if your studio gets in trouble, if there's a problem, if somebody threatens you, somebody strong arms you, Eddie Mannix is the guy who goes out and fixes that. Well, George Reeves takes up with Eddie Mannix's wife.
That's going to be harder to fix.
Toni Mannix. Now, the story was they had a kind of open relationship. Eddie had all these young stars, and that he was doing whatever he was doing with them, and she was a little bit older, and George liked it because George was, wasn't used to making the money he was making before. So she's buying him cars, she's buying him, help buy a house, all this kind of stuff at 1479 Benedict Canyon. Not that I'm into or anything. So anyway, the Superman show goes on hiatus. George goes to New York to try to sell a couple of, he wants to, Superman is isn't going to last that long. And he can't get a role. He can't get a job acting and doing anything else but Superman. He's the most recognizable star in the country, but he's recognizable as Superman. So he's screwed.
Unless he wants to do Wonder Bread commercials. There you
Right. The only thing he can do is at this point is commercials. And even then, because the story goes that, he was in From Here to Eternity and had a major part in it. And when they showed the movie to a test audience, people looked up and pointed at the screen and went, "It's Superman."
Oh, dear.
So you know what happened there.
Cut.
Cut. He probably went from having a major role across from Burt Lancaster to appearing in a couple of frames in the movie. And that's it. So anyway, just to finish it up here. So George goes to New York. He meets this woman, Lenora Lemon. Lenora Lemon is kind of a floozy, but George falls head over heels in love.
Oh, George.
And so he brings her back to Hollywood with him, and she moves into the house.
George.
And you know who's pissed off at this turn of events?
Everybody in the Mannix family.
Is Toni Mannix. She's not happy. And there had been, earlier in the year, somebody had cut the brake lines in George Reeves' Jaguar. So as he was going down Benedict Canyon, he tried to step on the brake and nothing happened.
I guess he figured he brought that to a safe conclusion.
And I believe he hit a tree or something and wasn't injured mightily, but enough, that the cops came and did a report on it and so on and so forth. So anyway, winds up that there are many people who believe, I don't know what to believe. I'm still back and forth on this, even to this day, because I think a lot of people were trying to make money off of this, to be honest with you. And spread because his two co-stars in the Superman series, Noel Neal and Jack Larson, Jimmy Olsen, both who are deceased. You know, the original Lois Lane is still alive.
You want to go bowling? Want to get pizza and go bowling?
I'd like to go. I would, I'd sit and talk to her for a while. Anyway, so these people made a living dealing in this conspiracy theory that George didn't just go up, have a few drinks, and pull out a gun and shoot himself in the head, and that was it.
It was staged.
It was either more than likely the finger was pointed at Eddie Mannix.
That was his specialty.
Had somebody sneak into the house and shoot George because he had rejected his wife. And it's not that he didn't love his wife. He just, he had all of these young starlets at his beck and call, and she was an older woman.
George had upset the apple cart. It was time to calm things down.
Yeah, it was. And so there's the story Hollywoodland goes through this private detective, Louis Simo, who was hired actually by George Reeves' mother.
Holy moly.
To investigate what happened, but then was called off the case after a while.
No more. Pull
So
out.
rumor is that she took a huge payout from the studio and went back to wherever she went to.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Nebraska, so I believe. I think they started in Iowa and then might have moved to Nebraska, but I think she went back to Iowa. Mrs. Besselo. So but that conspiracy theory gained ground, especially in the 60s and in the 70s and the 80s.
Now, what picture did they paint of George that might support the fact that he committed suicide? I thought that there wasn't much evidence for that.
There was a lot of partying going on in his house. He used to one of the theories was at one time, George was one of those guys, they called him Colonel George. George Reeves we're talking about. If you go back and you look at the Superman shows, you see a lot of out of work actors. You see a lot of actors that had fallen on hard times. Because what George did is he got guys that he knew and got them on the show so that they could earn a paycheck. They were mostly, a lot of them were B-movie actors. You saw very few A-movie, A-list or even, now it's probably a combination of that, television was so new that they didn't want to, actors at that point still thought that television would hurt their career.
They were character actors, though. Also, when they would come in on the scene, you could say right away, bad guy. There's a criminal. There's somebody Superman's going to have to deal with sooner than later.
Right. But he had, George had a number of these guys that were friends, and George made sure they got a paycheck and wasn't above handing somebody a 50 or 100 because he was making the sauce. He was rolling in it at that point. So he took care of people. And so for a while, there was a theory that maybe one of these people killed him for some reason.
Didn't get their paycheck.
Well, I didn't hear that they didn't get their paycheck, but maybe one of these guys had gone off the deep end or something and attacked them. But I don't think that was ever even close to being proven.
But there's another story for someone murdering him and staging the suicide.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that think, and again, I really advise you to watch Hollywoodland.
I have seen it, but I better see it again.
Yeah, to watch that movie and you'll get a sense. Now, again, I don't know how much of it is true, how much of it isn't true in the movie, but I've read enough about it and researched it enough because I just really have too much time on my hands. But Mikey, it's something, and I wrote about this when Chadwick Boseman passed away. Because it was for a guy my age, and you're a little bit older than I am, not much, but a little bit, so I don't know if this happened to you or not, but I was one of those kids who rushed home from school to watch Superman every day. And Superman, George Reeves, was the first loss by death I really can ever remember incurring in my life.
Yeah.
It's the first time that you were faced with the fact that people die. For a generation of people. For our generation, for many of us, especially if you were really into that show, like many kids, I mean, we would go to school the next day and talk about what happened on Superman. I don't think people have an idea how popular this show was when it was on and when it went into syndication. And so our parents, for the most part, had to deal with telling us about death much earlier and than they had to. And of course, my father told me that Superman went nuts and jumped off a roof.
But he could fly, so that doesn't make sense.
Right. But, he can't really fly. He doesn't. He's just a person. He's not really Superman, which, because the first time I dealt really with death was like 1965 when my grandfather died on my mother's side. That was the first time I ever remember going to a funeral. I was 10 years old, 9 years old, something like that. But when I was 5.5 or 6, it was first grade, I had to deal with the death of Superman.
Wow.
And Superman was much more popular to me than my grandfather or my father or, anybody else.
It was huge.
Yeah, at that age. So maybe that's why I take a keen interest in it. Maybe that's why I've all these years. I mean, I'll tell you something else weird, Mike and Mikey, and you'll I think you'll understand this because you're a little bit metaphysical. When you go to, and I've been there a number of times, to 1479 Benedict Canyon.
What's it look like?
It looks like it did back in 1959. They haven't changed it much. Whoever owns it keeps it much as it was. There's an odd and strange vibe around that house. Now, I've never been inside, but I've been outside a number of times. And every time I've gone.
It's not the only strange house in the Hollywood Hills, believe me.
Right. It's like when you go by the Sharon Tate house.
Yes.
Or the Lobianco house.
Yes.
Or any of those houses where there's been one of those Hollywood deaths that, well, really, see, I think there's always, when somebody dies, I mean, I remember when I was in rehab after the coma, the guy in the bed next to me died. And the room was funky for the next couple of days.
Couldn't quite get it right.
As a matter of fact, my sister went over and opened up the window because there's a belief that when somebody dies,
let them out.
You open up the window to let their spirit out. And nobody was opening up the window. So
no exit. Yeah, you couldn't find the elevator.
Yeah, they don't use the elevator. There's doors on the stairwell, so they're not leaving. But it was but that was and I just wonder sometimes, and I try to connect the dots between that and those conspiracy theories. You add Superman, you add Kennedy, which is the most conspiracy theory event that maybe has happened in the entire history of our country.
I don't know. I think January 6th maybe, or all the brouhaha surrounding the election of Joe Biden might surpass that in terms of participation.
Well, maybe, but I think we're much more transparent these days. I mean, if you study the Kennedy stuff, you can go back and you can look and you can say, well, the Warren Commission was rushed. There was this, there was that, there was the other thing, boom, boom, boom. There was no TV with the Warren Commission. We weren't allowed in the rooms.
And there was no major discussion afterwards. It was like we had to
Yeah.
take it apart ourselves.
Yeah, there was no, for better or for worse, there was no right wing or left wing talk radio that said, well, no, that's not right. We are investigating with this. It was an era where everybody shut up about what happened.
And it was also an era where a team of producers wouldn't jump on a new release like that and take it apart.
Right.
We didn't do it that way at that time. We didn't, newsrooms were not designed that way. You had an editor that could make it shorter, it might make it better, but you couldn't completely rework a story like that without a team of reporters.
Yeah, well, you reported the news. You reported the fact of what happened. And that's what Walter Cronkite did. Walter Cronkite did not put opinion. Chet Huntley, David Brinkley did not put opinion. You didn't know if they were Republicans or Democrats. You didn't know if they were liberal or conservative. You didn't know where they stood on the Vietnam War. You didn't really know much of anything. Now, it's pretty evident where people stand, no matter whether in news or whatever they do.
Usually by way of who they associate with and where they work.
Right. You have a channel called Fox News, which is dispensing right-wing rhetoric
for profit.
4 hours a day.
Hate for profit.
And you have, and to be fair, you have MSNBC, which is dispensing a whole lot of left-wing rhetoric 24 hours a day, also for profit. So the truth lies probably somewhere in the middle. And if we're educated people, you can go and get a book, you can go to the library, you can go online, you can vet your sources, and you can read about it, just like I did with the Superman conspiracies. Enough people wrote about them and talked about them, and there was enough information available if you wanted to pursue it. That was there. And I put that with my ability to reason and, look at things and stay kind of in the middle lane of things that I don't know about, to look at it and try to figure out what was the truth. And I can tell you that there's no figuring out really what was the truth.
Well, that takes us right back to the beginning, where in the troika, the three-way power play of truth, justice, and the American way, the first thing that has to be weakened for the other two to fail is truth, where you can make truth what you want, where Elon Musk can now start dealing his own Musk truth, separate from any other kind of truth in the world. What kind of truth do you have? Well, that's very interesting. Do you have Musk truth? You must have Musk to get the truth. And that doesn't mean that it's better or superior to the truth that you have, but it's a very different truth, a completely different one. Have you tried looking at it this way? Here's not necessarily the truth. It's just an opinion truth.
Right. And, I'd like to say that wouldn't have happened in the day of Cronkite and in the day of, but it happened, it just didn't spread.
Well, I'd like to talk to the guys who used to own Twitter just 2 days ago. What were they thinking on Thursday and Friday of last week when they knew they were going to be fired? What did they think was going to happen to their product that they must have cared about, that they worked so hard to establish, that they have fought for against all sorts of criticism? What did you think was going to happen to your tool, to your media darling, when Elon Musk got a hold of it? And the first thing he did, which was symbolic, was to carry the kitchen sink into the headquarters, fire the CFO, and fire the CEO. Now no one knows how to run the company. But Elon doesn't care about that because he's run companies before. He'll figure it out. Something will come to him. But before he figures out how to run the company, he decides to weaken it by twittering the lies about Paul Pelosi. And then what's next for today? He's got to have some alternate truth for today to stay in because he's like Donald Trump. He's only happy if he's in the headlines and it's a good story.
Right.
No criticism.
It's not about you. It's not about serving the public with your position. It's about and it's funny because I was going to say it's about making money, but it's not. It's about his ego then it's about making money because he's made enough money to put his ego
First.
at first. And it pisses me off because every time I see a Tesla drive down the street, I want to open a window and spit on it. And I know that people buy them because they're convenient, they're status, they're this, they're that. But their whole public relations outfit, their whole existence in the media,
Their
has
marketing
one
prowess.
of we don't need you, screw you.
Yeah.
We're not gonna let you drive one of our cars. You're a piece of shit journalist. We don't want you. We don't need you. People will buy our cars without you reviewing them.
In fact,
Because
don't review.
if you say something bad, we don't know how to get past that. You can't say anything bad about the leader.
You never ever got past their working relationships in the Fremont plant. They still have state laws that have been violated and court cases to face and fines to pay, just over the way they treat the people who put together those Teslas that everyone is so excited about.
Oh,
And
yeah,
by the way,
yeah.
if you were spitting at Teslas down in LA, you'd be dry by now because they are everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. You know what? They're everywhere here too in Spokane. One of the most unbelievable things that I think I've seen is I can understand Seattle, I can understand Portland, I can understand San Francisco and LA and, all up and down the coast. But here is, and they just, matter of fact, my friend and I, who I'm out here hanging with, we just went by the Tesla dealership yesterday. They just opened up a new one and I just wanted to kind of look at it. I didn't go in, it was closed as a matter of fact, but I wanted to look at what it looked like because I have not been, well, no, I have been in a Tesla dealership once before, but it was early on when they first started, selling Teslas.
You think the Chevy dealership would be closed on a Sunday? I don't think so.
I think it was actually.
Really?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's funny. California dealers are open on Sundays. Many other places they're not. It's extremely tough to buy a car on Sunday in Pittsburgh.
Really?
Yeah, they still Sunday's a day of off, of rest. Sunday's a day for you to be with your family. And this, as you move in here toward a place that is Spokane, much more Midwest than it is West Coast.
Conservative Northwest.
Right. You start to see that kind of edict. Matter of fact, there's a big dealer over here in Idaho, I should say, in Kellogg, that sells a gazillion cars. He's one of the biggest dealers in the world. They sell more cars than probably anybody else in the Northwest. They discount them. They close on Sunday.
Huh.
And I actually find it refreshing because we're old enough to remember when everything did close on Sunday.
Yep.
You couldn't go to Walmart. Well, it wasn't a Walmart, but you couldn't go to Sears on Sunday.
Could you go to the Piggly Wiggly? I think you could.
I don't, Mikey, I don't think so. I know in New York you couldn't because the only things that were allowed to be open in New York with the blue laws were gas stations, auto repair facilities, like towing services and things like that, and small family run supermarkets and food and beer distributors. But you couldn't buy beer until 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
No 10 o'clock buzz.
The Catholic Church made sure that nobody was gonna, if you were going to church, you were going with a hangover.
To suffer in the Lord's presence.
And because I remember there used to be a beer distributor where we used to get ice. And when we go on picnics, my father was big on Sunday. He had loading everybody in the car. going, taking a ride 30, 40 miles upstate and going on a picnic. And we could never get ice before 1 o'clock in the afternoon because the beer distributor didn't. So finally, my old man went and got an ice machine for his gas station. So now he had ice whenever he needed it. And I loved it because on hot days, extremely hot days, I would just open up the ice machine.
Put your little Vinnie head in there. Put your head full of Superman in there.
Crawl into it and pray nobody locked the door.
Pray that truth, justice, and the American way would prevail, at least as far as the ice machine goes.
Yeah. Truth and justice are wonderful things, Michael, but they're so hard to find.
Well, they're inflexible. You either have it or you don't. There's no halfway with either one. Now, with the American way, that's more difficult. That's a moving target. It won't stay still. It doesn't relegate itself to a fixed place. It's moving at all times. And that makes it more difficult to define that or to be happy with the result.
Right. And we'll jump into, because I think we had a very good conversation about truth today. I don't know how many people will listen to it. And if you listen to this show today, you have three things that you know now. What do you do about Twitter? Why don't people tell you the truth?
And what's the address of Superman's last house?
And what's the address of the place where Superman was either killed or killed himself? But
1475,
1479.
Benedict Cannon.
But Mikey, the truth, somewhere in this country, we got away from the truth in that it's not just, and what I want to finish the thought from before. When you look for the truth, you need something. You need to be smart enough or educated enough to figure out what the truth is. You need to know where to go. In the old days, you had to go to the library, or you had to go buy a book, or you had to stand in Barnes and Noble. You had to go downtown to Barnes and Noble on Fifth Avenue and go inside and find the book that somebody wrote about Superman and sit there and read it for a day, and then put it back in a thing and go down to the village.
Take notes. Take notes and get down to the East Village.
Down to the village where you could hang out with Louis Abelafia. And
ask him about it. You could ask Louis about the truth. You get another answer.
Well, you know what? Louis always told me the truth. That's what I liked about Louis. That's why I got along with Louis so well. Because unlike my father, who told me that Superman jumped off, thought he went nuts and jumped out a window, or my mother, who, told me various and sundry little lies. I mean, she wasn't a big, but, you have the lies that you get, the lies that your teacher tells you, the lies that you get all over the place. You're lied to as a little kid constantly. But Louis was a guy when I hooked up with him and learned about what he was about and saw him on the Alan Berg show and went down to his studio and talked to him and said, he told me the truth. He told me his truth, what it was, but he didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't lie to me. He was probably one of the first people I ever remember that was straight up with me. Him and my cousin Joe, who I hated for many years because he would tell me the truth. But I still hadn't learned that sometimes people tell you the truth because they love you.
Right.
And not because they're trying to hurt you. But Louis was the first adult. Now, again, whether the truth was his truth and what he believed, but he was true to himself. And he was a person who said, I'm going to do things the way I see fit. And society will have to mold itself around me. I mean, he was a narcissist in the truest sense of the word, but he also had that piece of him that wanted to help people. I mean, I think Louis wanted to help himself more than anybody else.
Right. Yeah.
But he wasn't afraid to say that. He wasn't afraid to say, I'm going to take off my clothes and pose with my hat in front of my Johnson and run for president and post that poster all over the place because I want people to notice me. I want people to look at me. I want to be known as someone who spreads love around. And by spreading love, maybe my art will become more popular and maybe I'll get laid a lot more. And I think
what kind of art was he specializing in?
All kinds of abstract stuff. All, I would love to get a piece of his art. I really would. I have to try to find out. I know it's around somewhere. I made contact with his brother a few years ago. His brother is, maybe you've heard of Oscar Abelafia, very famous rock and roll and personality photographer from the 60s.
Ah.
He's got some pictures, boy. Oscar used to follow Andy Warhol around. And go to places like Trudy Heller's and all those places that were in Manhattan in like 66, 67.
Artist salons.
Yeah, all the places. Because I used to go with Lewis. Lewis used to go to these places. And I would sneak out. He'd be running around giving out his posters and all this other kind of stuff. And so I sent him an email, and I think he was sick or something. I probably should try because I'm sure that he's up there in age. He's probably in his 80s. To see what happened to some of that. I remember his studio. He had paintings all over the place. As a matter of fact, I found a picture of his studio online not too long ago at 129 East 4th. And I still remember that place like it was yesterday. It was a long, railroad type store under an apartment building. And the bathroom was out the back door. Wasn't even have a bathroom in it. You had to go through. You had a fox lock on the back of the thing so nobody would break in. And you had to take the fox lock up. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a fox lock, which is the bar that you put by the door.
So they can't kick it in.
They can't kick it in. And then you went to the bathroom in the back, but it was truly, it's always, well, I don't know why I remember all that stuff so clearly, but I do. I really should write all of this down before I get really nuts. But again, that's where the truth was.
And it was welcome, wasn't it?
Yeah, because you knew that you were in a world where people, or maybe every other kid didn't know. Sometimes I wonder, did you learn about stuff too fast? Did you lose out on a piece of growing up because your path, my path, was a different one, was going to be one that most kids weren't going to take at that age. Maybe when they went to college, maybe when they joined the army or, that kind of stuff.
Well, how old were you when you were hanging with Lewis in the village?
Started hanging with Lewis in 66 and 67. So I was 11 and 12.
Yeah. It was young, but there was still a lot of summer of love to be had.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was right. It was smack dab in the middle of it. 67, 68. Because he ran for president in 68. So he started that whole thing in really late 66.
Did he get a lot of votes or any votes?
He got some, yeah. I don't think he got a lot. Maybe 1,000 or something like that.
He was on the ballot?
In New York, I think he made the ballot.
For the primary?
Yeah, in the primary. But he was running on the Love Party, so really. But
where's that going to get you?
I got to go back and look, but I think he may have gotten enough to get on the primary ballot in New York. But I always remember putting the posters up, and I remember I took home a bunch of posters, and hid them under my bed because my father was like a right wing, honor America,
And he would never look under your bed.
and he would never look there, and somehow, some way, he seen them when I was going. Because what I used to do is I used to go to school. I would get off of school, ditch my books, and get on a train and go into Manhattan. And somehow he found one of them somewhere. And man, did I take an ass kicking for that. What are you bringing this crap into my house for? I'll get out there and kick his ass. He's not going to mess with my kid. My father didn't realize that kicking his ass wasn't going to, it wasn't going to change my mind. My mind had been opened up.
And a good thing too.
My mind, well, the great thing about Louis Abalafi is there was a lot of beautiful women that hung out around his place, man. And I could say with no loss of truth that I've always been a fan of beautiful women. If there's anything that'll get a kid to get on a train, go down to the East Village.
Get on that train and go west, young man.
It's beautiful women. And it was one of these days when we're not, I'll tell you a couple of stories when we're not on the air. There's a couple of really good stories to be told that I'll save for the book.
129 East 4th?
129 East 4th.
So what was your stop when you came in from Queens?
It depended on what train I was taking. If I was taking, usually I would get off at Delancey Street and walk up. If I was taking the E train. If I was on the F, I would go to East 4th. No, West 4th.
That's what I was thinking, West 4th.
And
West
walk
4th was
across from Cooper Union.
Big station in the village was West 4th.
And there was another station on 2nd Avenue. Matter of fact, I think the 2nd Avenue one was the one that I used the most. It was the E train. And the E train came into Manhattan, snaked around, went down 8th Avenue, then came back on its way out to Brooklyn. Oh, no, to Chambers Street, excuse me.
Chambers Street.
And sneaked around. Was at that time the last stop was at Chambers Street on the E. And if I went on the L, I would take the Lexington Avenue line down to St. Mark's Place or Houston Street, and then walk back up from Houston. Something, depending on what, if it was a Saturday, I would go to like Washington Square Park in the morning.
Just to get up, get some of the vibe.
Yeah, I would get a bagel and a soda, or a bagel and an orange juice, and go, which was 50 cents at the time, at Zum Zum. Zum Zum was the name of the restaurant. Zum Zum was on 4th Street or something like that. And then there was another little coffee shop on the other side. And go there, get a bagel and coffee, and then walk across to the East Village, because the East Village was still a shady neighborhood.
Oh yeah, bread knife country.
Yeah, East Village was still. I mean, you still didn't want to go to Tompkins Square Park after dark.
There were still buildings in the East Side at that time that were virtually abandoned. There were squatters.
Oh, yeah.
People who took advantage of it. It's impossible to visualize that now, but it was a fact at that time, late 60s. One of the cool things was Lewis. We were on 4th. The Hells Angels were on 3rd. And Lewis knew the Hells Angels. He knew guys that were in the Hells Angels. And it was almost like in the neighborhood, if you were a friend to Lewis, nobody messed with you, because they knew that connection. And the people that lived in the projects, which were a block away down 4th, the big brick projects,
knew that you didn't mess with people that were going in and out of that place. Plus, the 5th precinct was right around the corner.
It's a busy neighborhood. Lewis, the Hells Angels, and the 5th precinct.
precinct that you see at NYPD Blue, that's the precinct. It was across, there was a park between 4th and 5th. And across from that park, you could see it from 4th, was the 5th I think it was the 5th, or was it the 7th at the time, or the 9th, I forget.
That's why Sipowicz had such a nice office space, because that building had been there since before the Civil War.
That building had been there for a long time. And it was always, you know, I mean, so you had on 2 blocks down, you had the Hells Angels. On 3rd, you had East 4th, where Lewis was. And then on 5th were the cops.
So who do you need today? The Angels, the cops, or a little art?
And believe you me, the cops knew the Angels.
Oh, of course.
And the Angels knew the cops. You know, there was a synergy that went on between the cops and the Angels.
Well, isn't there always a synergy between the cop and the criminal that links them so that they're in the same place doing the same thing?
Yeah, I think if you've ever watched the movie Heat, you really catch that in the conversation between De Niro and Pacino when they sit in a coffee shop and they talk to each other about their lives.
Same thing.
They're very similar, except one guy is committed to stealing something and the other guy is committed to catching them. But they both think and use the same methods. They both live similar lifestyles.
Yeah.
You know, they both got to be ready to go like that or get killed.
They're part of their world, but not the real world.
Right. It's a different world. It was such that movie Heat was so educating in the fact that you learned a lot. I forget, I know it was Michael Mann who directed it. I don't know if he actually wrote it, but it was such an eye-opener as to how cops and criminals, and listen, you know, you knew that in New York, you knew that the cops and the mafia guys all knew each other.
They didn't do anything.
On opposite sides of the fence. They were all taking money.
And they're all in each other's imagination all day long. The cops are thinking about the criminals are thinking about the cops. They're in the same place. They're eating the same food. They're going to the same clubs. They're part of that same lifestyle. They have the reason they're not home with their wife and kids is for the same reason. Always the same.
You make sure that that your guys don't mess with the neighborhood, and we'll look the other way when you bring in the cigarettes or the booze.
We can play ball, but remember, there's always a line that they can't cross, which of course they cross.
They consistently, yeah, because that's part of the male, and I think female too, but mostly the male ego is that you're going to push and see how far you can go in any given situation, right?
Which brings up Geno Smith. There's a guy who had an ugly, terrible, downtrodden situation to live in just a couple weeks ago. The things that were said about him, the half-truths that were told about him, the expectations that surrounded his play, and the criticism of everything about him was so one-sided. You think he could never go out and win a football game, and that's all he does now.
Well, he won me over when he said everybody wrote me off and I didn't write back.
Yeah.
I said that this guy has got some nads. He's got something. Now let him back it up.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's backed up every inch of it.
Better and better.
He's backed it up. I mean, you talk about talking the talk and walking the walk. My biggest question is, did he know he was as good as he is?
That's a good question. But the answer is don't ever ask that question.
Right. And that's not a question you really want to walk. I mean, maybe after the season, you might want to ask him.
Well, his experience being a backup was not lost. It wasn't wasted. It was filed away. And when you put him in cold, you got one kind of Geno Smith, but when you let him prepare for an entire week, now for several weeks in a row, when the offense is his and when the team is his, you get a very different Geno.
Yeah, and did Pete Carroll, the head coach of the Seahawks, did he design a system that, and you would have to think the answer to this would be yes, that played to Geno's strengths, that didn't put him in a position to throw that interception at the end of the game, which was his fault. Geno was a great quarterback for 3.5 quarters. But then all of a sudden,
you know who he played like? He played like a guy named Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo was a great quarterback unless he was under pressure or if it was late in the game or he had to make a throw, in which case he was Mr. Turnover. And they found a way around that with a running game, as you saw this. I don't know if you saw the 49er game.
I saw parts of it. I saw, was it McCaffrey?
McCaffrey, wow.
And that, yeah, I mean, that was magic, man. That's
a running touchdown, a passing touchdown, and a throwing touchdown.
Yeah, that's something that you see and you just go, man, I wish I was in the stadium to see that.
You know where that game took place?
That was right by your house, wasn't it?
Right down the road, and over half the crowd, Vinnie, was in red. It was like a home game for the 49ers. It was so loud during the touchdowns that the Rams are going, what? This is our place. This is our home. This is our house. Not today. It is certainly not yours today. You can have it tomorrow.
I'm sure Bill Plaschke has a column out today exorbiating the Rams fans that decided to sell their tickets.
It's not business. It's personal.
Amazing.
Oh wait, maybe it's not personal, it's business. I don't know, whichever it was. Somebody sold their tickets and somebody showed up in red and there was a lot of them.
Exactly. Well, Mikey, by the way, Lulu's back in power.
Oh yeah. Brazil?
I almost said the Brazilian old president is the new president. And I got to ask you a question. Why the hell don't we do that in the United States? After watching Obama over the weekend,
I know.
I mean, I'm sitting there going, why can't we elect this guy again? I'm not saying Obama was the perfect president. He had a lot of faults too, but not as many as these guys do.
It's a good question. We don't have anybody like him in the wings waiting to go on.
Excuse me. No, there's nobody sitting there. I mean, the closest we have is maybe Gavin Newsom. I don't know, and he's no Obama. No. They haven't.
He's not an orator. He's like Joe Biden in that his voice betrays him. It gets gravelly and gets distant and gets indistinct. He's not a good orator.
Yeah, well, there are hardly any good orators.
There's two that'll be working tonight. I want you to see their show, Peyton and Eli. Each an orator in his own fashion, each a quarterback with a championship goods and awards on their shelf. But they're putting on a pretty good show, and I find it impossible to watch the Fox broadcast or the ESPN broadcast with the Fox announcers. And I go with Peyton and Eli. I recommend it tonight for Monday Night Football, Cleveland and Cincinnati.
Yes, for dominance of the state of Ohio.
The Ohio Cup. Who nobody wants it. Once again, the Ohio Cup goes unclaimed.
No, it goes right between your legs. Mikey, what a show today.
I know.
We covered.
We started with truth. We started with truth. We ended up with Peyton and Eli.
Which, listen, those two guys speak the truth. I mean, they're like two brothers locked in any basement watching a game, right?
I know.
By the way, I'll put a plug in for this, by the way. I'm excited to see the new CNN show tomorrow morning. I don't know if I'll get up I hope they're going to rebroadcast it for the West Coast.
I'm going to miss Caitlin Collins reporting from the White House. She's good.
Yeah, I really am. I'm in love with her, boy. She knows what she's doing.
Yes.
Yeah, she is. She's just on the stick, man. She knows how to get down to it. She's not afraid to ask questions, and she's easy to look at. So, not that Helen Thomas wasn't,
No, I know what you're saying. What you're saying is you'll see us here Wednesday at 10:10.
I will see you here Wednesday at 10:10 if the Lord's willing, the creek don't rise, man. Mikey, have a very good Halloween. Be safe, man. Don't you go out trick-or-treating, pal.
I'm a Hawaiian vampire. I don't go anywhere.
And stay off of the back steps if the cats have been there.
I have to go back and work on that some more.
Peace, love, man, a Shevitz, baby. And bring stick a little Vicks under your nose. That works.
Okay. It's not the smell, it's the stubbornness of it.
Talk to you later.
What a wine. I'll use the wine to clear it up.
There you go. Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby. Bye-bye.